all of his stuff, though, about these wordless things. Did that work for anybody?
For me, each of the traditions work, so
What?
I'm kind of having a problem with choosing.
What's that?
Choosing because all of them make sense.
Right.
To a certain degree.
Right.
Besides the fact that they overlap in
Right.
the majority of the areas, if you ask me, I wouldn't be able to choose
Which one? Yeah.
Not now, at least.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Craig's goal is for you to see a situation and say, I think that the socio-psychological would be the best one for dealing with this, and maybe I'll try another one just to push myself to think differently. So
maybe just view them of different solutions to different problems, but just taking one and having one perspective over communication in general, right. I don't think it works.
Well, see, your problem as a graduate student and as a researcher, and if you're going for doctoral work, is that you will have to do your work from a perspective.
Yes.
You will have to choose a theory and use it consistently. That's part of the field. So, Joe.
Originally, I wanted to do something on the socio-cultural tradition.
Right.
Now, I kind of really want to do it on phenomenological.
Well, I'm really feeling good here tonight.
It's making a lot more sense, though, to me, how it's applying to what I want to do.
Well, you've got Kent's article, Kent and Taylor's article. I can, if you send me an email, I might even be able to find the PDF of it somewhere in my hard drive somewhere. Yeah, but it's a nice article about showing respect and trying to build bridges by dialogue. Yeah. All right. So Buber gives us this Bakhtin. I don't think there was any Bakhtin reading in here. The Russian. Anyway, Bakhtin is also useful. Gadamer about tradition, and we are constituted by tradition. It's impossible to stand objectively apart from tradition and evaluate it, because we are affected by it. We are created by it. So all we have is the possibility of realizing our prejudice through encounter with others. He had that whole thing about translation, translation to other languages. And so in a sense, all dialogue is translation. Our theater talk is translation. Trying to take my frame and your frame and finding where we can describe things together. The deconstruction article, I don't know how many of you have read other deconstruction kind of things. They constantly say one thing and then they say the opposite, and then so it's both this and not this, The key point of trying to make sense of deconstruction is they believe, deconstructionists argue, that anything that we think is a whole. So let's make anything that we think is a unified whole is actually assembled of ill-fitting parts, fragments of a bit of this philosophy, a bit of this theory, a bit of this writer, a bit of this, so that everything has seams in it. It was sewn together, and we're pretending that these seams don't exist. So there are these seams or places where it comes together and it's not quite right. So there are inconsistencies. There are things that don't line up. But in our desire to have a unified whole, we ignore these and we blind ourselves to them. The deconstructionist tries to make a career out of pointing out, turning a magnifying glass on this and saying, look, this doesn't fit. This says one thing and it says another thing. It's inconsistent. Therefore, you have to face the fact that your unified perspective is constructed. So I'm going to deconstruct it. I'm going to take it apart. And so the deconstructionist project is to reveal to us that anything that we thought made sense doesn't make sense. And so at the end of the day, what do they say? And he says, well, just when you're communicating, realize you can't communicate. It's impossible to communicate. Now, other people say the deconstructionist project is really damaging because people live lives, according to standards and wholes and things that make sense to them. And so instead of ripping it to shreds and then handing you all the pieces back, there's a writer named Quine who uses this illustration. He says, all right, if this is the case, we're like a boat on the ocean, and we're trying to fix it without going under. So we're fixing it while we're sailing on it. And there are all things floating along, flotsam and jetsam. Things are floating along, and as we sail along, we have a problem with our boat. It leaks here. So maybe we find something along the way, and then we change it quick, and then pump the water out. So we're always constructing and reconstructing in a process of bricolage of whatever we have at hand. We fix it. But in the end of the day, we're sailing somewhere, and it will do us no good to pull the whole boat apart and have a bunch of pieces. So a little bit of that in here. So bricolage, what does that mean for you?
To French it means home repair, like what dads do on the weekend, supposedly, right?
Right.
Like the retail chain, Monsieur Nicolas.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, yeah, they use it, Quine uses it in the deconstruction or postmodern or what, use it to say you fix things with whatever's on hand and you try to keep the thing going. Yeah.
And we use that in qualitative research that came up as, now I'm embarrassed, I can't remember why it came up, but the word came up as one way of conducting an ethnology, and I kind of at a loss.
Well, whatever's at hand, yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose. Whatever's at hand, yeah. All right, Lisa, you want to come and talk? And if you clip, that'd be great. Here, I'll hand them out for you.
Oh, I need one from you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we have now left phenomenology. And our ship is still floating.
My article looks... Well, first I'll explain why I found my article. I'm doing my other project, and it's a paramilitary organization, so they have a chain of command. And as I was doing an interview, I noticed that depending on who the commander was or who was commanding that section of people, their thoughts of the organization drastically changed depending who they were under. So I went online and I found I wanted to find something with cybernetics in the military because it is such an odd structure, because you do have a chain of command and you're not kind of like freely floating within the people. And I found an article, and they reconceptualized control and command, and then they gave suggestions on practical ways of commanding effectively to not so much create communication, but to express creativity is the word they used, but not creativity like arts and crafts, so I'll explain a little better. They define control basically as carrying out an order. So in the military you have SOPs, which are standard operating procedures. You have guidelines that you need to follow. And basically someone who is in control says, follow these, and you do it by the book. They define command as using using creativity to express will. And what they mean by creativity is sometimes things happen that were never thought of. Like, stuff happens, especially when you're in unpredictable positions. So you need to think of a way to adapt to that, and that's the creative part. And expressing will, will is defined as both motivation and opportunity. So that is to want to do it and to be able to do it. So in their opinion, a commander is someone who can get people to do stuff, or they can do something. They can interpret the situation, they can come the best way of doing it, and they can have people want to do it and not stand there and be like, well, this isn't in my job description. No. One of the things that they talk about is there's a thing called mission commands. There are different types of commands. And one of the things is mission commands. A mission command is, this is the task that you have to do. Do it. Like, find a way to do it. As long as you're within general guidelines, find a way to do it. We don't really care how to do it. And that kind of gives freedom to the commander to direct it the way they want to. And they suggest that the doctrine of mission command kind of allows the most human creativity, the most, okay, what is going to work in this situation? One of the problems that they did it in a different order than I put this down. So next I'm going to talk about, they say only humans can control, because in order to control, you have to be able to have that creativity to be like, how do I take from what's in the SOP to apply it to something that's practical and is going to work? And they say that you need 3 things. They use the acronym CAR, which is competence, authority, and responsibility. Competence is physical, not so much not only like strength, but eyesight, motor reactions. Intellectual, not only that you're smart, but that you're able to adapt and apply theories and stuff that you have learned. Emotional, that you're able, and interpersonal, which allows you to interact with the people below you to command them. Authority, and then there's 2 types of authority, a legal and personal authority. So what is within the law, and especially in militaries, you're allowed to go a little beyond what normal organizations have within the law, because they are allowed to enforce things that most organizations aren't. And then personal, like your values, how do I feel about this, can I sleep at night? And then responsibility is external and internal, who do you answer to, basically. So some of the suggestions that they gave for putting this into practical use is to encourage creativity within the culture. And what they mean by this is that you pass things down the chain of command. So instead of micromanaging, being like, do it just this way, if something has to be done, give freedom within the limits, within the guidelines of what needs to be done, to kind of let them do it their way and like tweak it a little bit for certain situations. Trust subordinates, not micromanage. They gave an example in the Vietnam War where they had the people who were actually fighting, and then there were different levels of helicopters. There were like 4 level helicopters with the subordinates each over the other ones, and they were literally just looking down, like it was quite literally looking down, watching them. And they say by like micromanaging, you kind of stunt that, and people won't take the initiative to try to push it and like personalize it and make it their own, and assume responsibility for actions. That you have to, the person in charge, whether it be, a sergeant or it be a general, they have to take upon what they do and what the people below them do. So by assuming that responsibility, they're not going to have these wild, over-creative ideas, because they're going to have to answer for that at the end of the day. And know when to control and when to command. If it's a simple thing that you have to do, you don't need to try to find new ways or reinvent the wheel for something that's already there. If there's already a procedure, you do this, and it's very basic, and you have a basic situation, then just do that. And the problems to avoid micromanaging, abandoning military tradition and protocol. The reason that it exists is because they feel it works. So while you want to try to focus your stuff, you don't want to be like, okay, you don't want a general coming in and saying, let's have a roundtable discussion about what we're going to do, because that's just not practical for the situation. ineffectual commands, you don't want to, you need to be able to encourage and get your people to do stuff. You don't want to be standing there just telling them what to do, because it's, if they don't either don't listen or don't really want to do it, it's not going to work as well. Abuse of authority and lack of responsibility. Any questions?
So this is this certainly is cybernetic, and it applies to organizations. So so it's about systems and learning structures and people working within boundaries, but being creative and adaptive. So that's very much a cybernetic tradition. And control was about. Now, did they do any? Is there a research?
Yeah, they did. Their lit review wasn't like a traditional lit review, because what they did is they went to, this was created in Canada, but they did a lot in the US, and they did like allied countries. They went to different military organizations, and they read military like SOPs and training information more so than like educational stuff.
They do surveys and questionnaires and then report on correlations and statistics.
No, they read about like how the words were used. They attended conferences, and then they read like more books to try to get a definition from it. And then when they never got they got such varying different definitions, and then depending what branch of the military, and it was just all over the place. So then they reconceptualized it.
What do we call that? Help me, Melissa. A big literature review is a
Review for big literature?
yeah. When somebody goes through and looks at all the existing literature.
A review article.
Review article. Yeah, this sounds to me like a review article.
And then
right?
their conceptualization was used in like 11 or 12. Well, I mean, this is fairly recent, it's 2002.
Yeah.
But from 2002 to 2005, it was used in like 11 or 12 different articles.
Okay. Yeah, good.
This is really good handout.
Yeah, and your APA form is,
I remember the Capital Journal.
yeah, you did it. I was like, okay, she did it. Yeah, good job. But that's definitely a cybernetic article, because when you talk about controls, processes, and systems, that's cybernetics. And Anna, help me with this. Kubernetes, is that the steering person on a ship? Does that ring any bells for you? The Kubernetes or whatever. Cybernetics in the Greek, it comes from a Greek word meaning the helmsman who steers and controls the ship. So we'll hit cybernetics next week. But go and have wonderful phenomenological encounters of unconditional positive regard.